His lips touched hers under the cold airport light, and I stood there, not even realizing that I was watching them say goodbye. It had been 7 countries, countless nights in hotels, 1,000 memories shared between laughter and silence, and yet I was just his travel companion. As my heart broke, I forced the most rehearsed smile I could muster and walked over to them with the steady gait of someone who hadn't just lost everything. "Have a good trip," I said, my voice as steady as I could make it, stifling the storm raging inside me. His face looked surprised, but he said nothing. Sometimes the best destinations aren't stamped in your passport. They're the ones that reveal who never really intended to accompany you. I arrived at the airport 2 hours early just to surprise him before his flight to Singapore, supposedly. He was going alone, a business trip, nothing special. But after half a year together on so many flights and trains, it was almost a tradition for me to say goodbye. I clutched the bag containing small, practical items for the flight. Tissues, painkillers, his favorite snacks. The departure lounge was bustling. Among the sleepy travelers, I spotted his unmistakable silhouette, tall, his hair tousled, the usual calm on his face. My heart raced as it always did. I made my way through the suitcases and hurried people, and then I saw that he wasn't alone. She was beautiful, the kind of natural beauty that doesn't even try. Her dark hair falling in perfect waves, the calm demeanor of someone who belongs anywhere. Me, in my sweatpants and hair tied back, felt invisible. Before I could even process who she was, he pulled her toward him naturally. The kiss I saw was neither chaste nor brief. It was intimate, deep, full of history. I froze. The ground beneath my feet turned to glass, and my mind began to revisit every little gesture we had exchanged over the past few months. The midnight conversations in Bangkok, the sunrise in Marrakesh, his hand squeezing mine silently as we flew through turbulence over the Atlantic. All of this now seemed like a story that only I had read. I thought about backing away, disappearing, without being noticed. But a part of me, the same part that had convinced skeptical directors in tense meetings, refused to leave as an extra. I waited for the kiss to end. I put the bag in my purse, straightened my shoulders, and walked over to them with what was left of my dignity. "I thought I'd say hi before your flight," I said casually, which contrasted with my inner turmoil. He turned, his eyes wide. "Maya, what are you doing here?" And then he moved away from her, as if that would change anything. "I just came to wish you good luck with the negotiations in Singapore," I added, forcing a lighthearted tone. I looked at her. Her lipstick was slightly smudged, her face open and friendly. "Hi, I'm Maya, Jake's traveling companion. Our companies work in complementary sectors." "This is Eilis," he replied, tense. "My girlfriend." The word hit me with a dull impact. It wasn't new. It wasn't something incipient. It was something established, fixed. Eilis smiled, sincerely, but somewhat suspiciously. "He talks a lot about your projects. You're the marketing consultant, right? The one working on the expansion in Asia." I nodded, swallowing the bitter taste of realization. I was mentioned, summarized, a useful footnote. I wished him a good trip, and held his gaze long enough for him to understand that now I knew everything. I said goodbye with a fixed smile and walked away with steady steps, my boots echoing on the lobby floor. Only when I reached the parking lot, trembling, trying to fit the key into the car door, did I let what was trapped inside flow out silently. The drive back passed without me registering it. The radio was playing something, but it was my head that was screaming. I remembered everything. Sharing dumplings in Tokyo, getting lost in the alleys of Prague, laughing until we cried over a mistranslation in Barcelona. 7 countries, 14 flights, countless moments that now seemed all misinterpreted. When I entered the apartment, my cell phone was vibrating. "Maya, can I explain? Eilis and I have been together for 3 years. It's complicated," he said. It had always been professional. That I was a friend, an incredible work partner. Friend. It sounded like mockery. I threw the phone on the passenger seat and let my forehead fall against the steering wheel, finally crying without resistance. At home, I took off my boots and collapsed on the couch. I stared at the wall with the map and colored pins, each marking a place we had visited. Work trips that stretched into long weekends, long dinners, random outings. How could I not have seen it? An hour later, the doorbell rang. It was Samantha, my best friend since college, holding a paper bag. "Emergency kit," she said as she came in. "Wine, ice cream, and those weird Swedish candies that only I like. Appropriate medicine for broken hearts," she announced. "Just travel buddies," I muttered, without any conviction. Sam raised an eyebrow as she opened the wine. "Travel buddies don't text each other every day. They don't have inside jokes about every city. They don't keep a drawer full of each other's favorite snacks." I blushed, embarrassed. 3 years of dating, and she was never mentioned. In 6 months of traveling, he only talked about an ex he wanted to get over. I accepted the glass she handed me, filled to the brim. I thought it was in the past. Sam became serious. "Show me the proof." "Proof?" "Yes, your travel altar. I know you, Maya." I followed her to my office, on the wall, what she always called my personal travel sanctuary. Tickets, museum tickets, photos of us. He was laughing in a Paris cafe, in front of the Hong Kong. Skyline with his arm draped over my shoulder. "Just colleagues," Sam repeated, pointing to a hotel keycard I kept from the night in Vienna when we stayed up talking until dawn. We never kissed, but everything changed there. Or at least I thought it had. We had lunch like old friends, sharing a sandwich in the hotel cafeteria. "Henderson Consulting, right?" he said, taking a sip of tea. "Your presentation on expansion in Asia was the only thing that kept me awake last night." I chuckled. That's either a terrible insult to the other speakers or a backhanded compliment to me. He smiled, and the corners of his eyes lit up. The connection between us was immediate, but strictly professional. We exchanged business cards and LinkedIn profiles, and if it had stopped there, he would have remained just an interesting networking contact. Then came the snowstorm. O'Hare Airport was surrounded, and all flights were suspended. Hundreds of stranded executives scrambled for hotel rooms and rental cars. Amid the chaos, we decided to share the only room available at the airport hotel. There were 2 single beds, and an implicit agreement to help each other survive the nightmare. That night, with spotty Wi-Fi and poor room service, we talked for hours about much more than business. He was from Seattle, had backpacked through Europe after college, and played the guitar passionately, despite being tone deaf. He told me that his life's project was to create sustainable packaging. "What about you?" he asked as we shared expensive snacks from the vending machines. "I always wanted to be a marketing guru," I admitted. But my parents insisted on something serious. So I negotiated trips to interesting places. His eyes lit up. "I'm at a conference in Tokyo next month, if you want. Your beauty client would benefit from the sustainable materials sessions." That excuse was the kickoff, a professional pretext, a courtesy, the embryo of what he called our travel partner system. Tokyo became our first intentional date. We attended different sessions during the day and explored the city at night, including weekends. He spoke a little Japanese and knew the subway like the back of his hand. I used Maidon to find secret restaurants and make friends with the locals. "We make a good team," he said on our last night, watching the city lights from a lookout point. "Too bad our next commitments don't coincide." 2 weeks later, an email marked our return together, Hong Kong. There we effortlessly drew up the rules. Separate rooms, split meals, maintain professional courtesy during working hours. Nothing forced us to socialize outside of work, but we made sure to enjoy every free moment together. No romantic drama, just the advantages of traveling with someone you like. I agreed, ignoring the spark of disappointment when he mentioned friendship. Our third destination, Barcelona, changed everything. A booking error left us with only one room with a double bed. I can find another hotel, he offered. We're adults, I replied. We can share. That night, on opposite sides of the bed, the barriers we had created began to crumble. We talked about canceled commitments, family divorces, my defense of keeping people at a distance. Before falling asleep, he reached across the space between us and held my hand. I'm glad we're real friends, beyond work. We pretended nothing had changed in the morning, but something had. Our professional routine dissolved after Barcelona, and we began exchanging messages between trips, jokes, photos, recommendations. In Paris, we pretended it was for business to justify our strolls through neighborhoods and cafes. He taught me the technique of negotiating desserts by pretending to be a couple celebrating. Under the table, he held my hand. On the banks of the Seine, the air was heavy. Rome was our 5th destination. Business during the day, discoveries in the afternoon, deep conversations at night. Marrakesh was the 6th, with no business excuse. He just wanted to see the country, and I had the week off. We spent a week exploring Medinas, riding camels and drinking mint tea on terraces at sunset. One morning, I found him on the roof of the Riad photographing the sunrise. The light is perfect, he said, showing me the images. You should be a photographer. He smiled shyly. Maybe in another life. It was in Marrakech that he first mentioned his girlfriend, without naming her. My ex is trying to get back together, but I want something different. I believed him. Our 7th and final destination was Vienna. Business took us there, but we always extended our stay to discover the city together. On our last night, as the storm raged outside, he knocked on the door separating our rooms. My power's out, he explained in a low voice, and I invited him in. We lit candles and talked until dawn. Unlived dreams, regrets, parallel universes where our stories could have taken different paths. In another life, he whispered, his voice heavy with something unsaid. We would have met differently. The next morning, I dragged myself to my office and methodically dismantled every memory of our destinations. Photos, tickets, small souvenirs, 7 countries, 7 versions of us, all real and all fictional. Sam stood in the doorway, a glass of wine in his hand, watching me close the last box. You don't have to erase everything at once, he said softly. It's healthy to cry. I sealed the box with tape. I'm not mourning the relationship. I'm mourning my own stupidity. A week before the airport, we were in Kyoto, extending the end of a business trip in Tokyo. That's when I noticed the changes. He answered calls in a whisper, moved away from the table at the restaurant, came back restless, checking his watch. Everything okay? I asked, and he replied without looking up. Just work stuff. I believed him because I needed to believe him. After all, we were just traveling companions, respecting each other's privacy. But the phone calls weren't the only clue. He tuned out my stories, got distracted by his cell phone, immersed himself in other people's conversations as if I were invisible. On a night walk through a temple garden, I asked, "Are you listening to me?" He jumped up and put his phone away. "Sorry, it's just stress." That night, during dinner, I tried to get some truth out of him. "You seem distant." "Just tired," he said. And then something made him look me in the eyes. "Being here with you is important, Maya." My chest filled with relief, but he changed the subject. "Tell me about your presentation tomorrow." 2 days after we returned from Kyoto, Sam called, sounding scared. "Don't shoot the messenger, but I saw Jack yesterday at Toscanus." I imagined a business dinner. Sam's silence, however, said it all. He was with someone else, she described. An elegant woman who didn't look like a coworker. I ignored it, until while browsing his Instagram, I saw only photos of events and landscapes, and me, always in a group. On Facebook, the name Elis Reynolds appeared in all his birthday and Christmas messages, marking her digital territory. The following night, I decided to surprise him with a reservation at an exclusive 9-course sushi restaurant. He arrived visibly nervous, pulling at his collar, his eyes darting around when he saw the place. Between each delicacy, he would step away to answer his phone and return with a pale face. "I'm sorry," he muttered. "It's an emergency." I asked if everything was okay. "Complicated, I'll call you tomorrow." I paid the bill alone, confused. What emergency justifies a 9 p.m. escape on a Tuesday? The morning brought only unread messages and a rushed email. "Something came up. I'm going to Singapore tomorrow. I'll call you when I get there." That was the last I heard from him, until I found him kissing Eilis at the airport. 3 days. Later, his pleas went from poorly rehearsed explanations to desperation. "Please don't let our friendship die because of a misunderstanding." The last one came while I was packing my travel souvenirs. "I'm outside. Talk to me." His car was waiting on the sidewalk. One impulse wanted to lock me in my room. Another wanted to scream at him for his mistake. But the consultant in me knew. I needed answers. "I'll talk to him," I announced to Sam, "but you stay." When I opened the door, I found an exhausted, unshaven man, hunched over. 5 minutes, I stipulated, holding the doorknob. He hesitated. "Maya, I know how this looks, but it's complicated." I took a deep breath. "Simple?" I challenged. He closed his eyes before speaking. "Eilis and I have a history. We were together for 3 years, until she went to Europe, when she came back 6 months ago. We didn't know if it would work out. You were my plan B. Entertainment between one business deal and another." My chest tightened. "I'm not a backup option." He raised his head, his deep dark circles contrasting with his trembling voice. "Our connection has always been real. You're important. Important enough that I told Eilis everything." His voice sank. "Did you know about all our meetings?" Silence. "I didn't know that," I replied, my voice dry. "You compartmentalized your life. Eilis at home, me on my trips, the best of both worlds." He tried to argue, agitated. "It wasn't calculated. I got confused. I developed feelings I didn't expect." The heat on my face betrayed my anger. Feelings don't justify betrayal. And there, on the threshold of my apartment, with no hotel bed to separate us, I understood that some journeys don't end when you reach your destination, but when you discover that there is no safe haven on his map. That night in Vienna, enveloped by a storm that seemed to echo our uncertainties, he knocked on the door separating our rooms and asked for help. "The light went out," he said, and we sat by candlelight, revealing unlived dreams, regrets, and parallel versions where our lives would have followed other paths. At one point, he confided, his voice heavy with silence, "In another life, we would have met differently." As I packed away old memories, photos, notes, small souvenirs, from the 7 countries we had traveled through, Sam appeared at my office door, a glass of wine in his hand, reminding me that I didn't have to erase memories all at once. But I wasn't crying for that relationship. I was crying for my own naivety. I then returned to our itinerary through Kyoto, where I noticed the first cracks, whispered phone calls, discreet distancing, vague looks, excuses about work stuff that I wanted to believe. After all, we were just travel companions, business partners who respected each other's privacy, until the frequency of those calls and his lack of interest in my stories became warning signs that I was reluctant to acknowledge. One night, in a temple garden, he hid his phone when I asked if he was listening to me. Later, he confessed that the trip was important to him because we were together, but he changed the subject to my presentation the next day. 2 days after we returned from Kyoto, Sam told me he had seen him having dinner with another woman at Toscanis, an Italian restaurant famous for romantic dinners. He had lied about the nature of the meeting, pretending it was a work commitment. I scoured his social media and discovered an Elis Reynolds marking her territory on birthdays and anniversaries. I convinced myself it was paranoia, until one night at an expensive sushi restaurant, he ran out to take an urgent call and left before dessert, promising explanations that never came. At the airport, I saw him kissing Elis under the fluorescent lights, and his messages begging me not to destroy our friendship over a misunderstanding turned to desperation. When I finally gave him 5 minutes to talk, he tried to explain. Elis was his wife, separated for a year but not yet divorced. He had called me his Plan B, entertainment on his trips. The feeling of betrayal burned inside me, and I closed the door firmly. Then I received a message from Elisa Wilson, saying she needed to tell me something Jack had never revealed. The next day, I found Elis, elegant, serene in a blue coat, at the Yacht by coffee shop. We sat face to face, two women united by a man. She spoke of 4 years of marriage, 6 months of attempted reconciliation, and the emotional connections her husband systematically built with travel companions, without ever crossing the physical line, keeping everything separate from his real life. She confessed that she discovered the pattern after Boston and London, and that she sought me out to warn another woman. When I asked if she would stay with him, Elis hesitated, admitting that she didn't. No, either. Jack kept their lives separate until he was forced to choose, and now, standing in front of me, Elis offered me a way out, the back door of the restaurant, so I could leave without having to face him again. As I drove away, my hands shaking on the steering wheel, I deleted Jack's notifications and called my boss. I needed to get my career back on track, to prove that I did have value, without relying on comfortable alliances or convenient relationships.